Going to get started.
Great.
Good evening to everybody. It's just a delight to see you all here. This is Dave Underhill, and I am pleased to welcome you to this District 7780 Rotary Forum. I would like to let everybody know we are recording this forum. It will be made available later on our Rotary website, and we may use it for Rotary or for Pine Tree Institute non-commercial use only. So if you participate, or if you participate in the Q&A at the end, please know that you're being recorded. It is a journey that doesn't stop, but it has certainly taken some wonderful turns. And the wonderful turns have come as we've learned more, in particular in Rotary, about this broad topic of ACEs. And so for the next hour or so, we are going to try to share some of what we've been doing and what we've been learning and where we are heading. To begin, I'd like to welcome and introduce our district governor, Peggy Belanger. Peggy.
Thank you, Dave, and good evening, everyone. It's a wonderful opportunity. Again, as you know, Rotary opens opportunities for us to get together and to continue our journey as we learn about an extraordinary initiative. I want to thank Dave Underhill and Larry Mccullough for spearheading this, for Bob Mckenzie and all of his work with the Recovery Initiative. It is because of their tireless efforts that we are all here tonight, so thank you. I also want to thank the volunteers who are taking the time to do this very important work. It's needed now more than ever as we are trying to live through these very challenging times. The ACEs program through the Pine Tree Institute is really leveraging an excellent Rotary connection with our communities. I applaud the concept of master trainers as it is truly one of the only ways that we can reach our community members. No doubt in my mind, the impact of this initiative will be transformative. Master trainers are about inspiring and changing and giving us a break in the cycle of adverse childhood experiences. Rotary is a conduit for change. The ACEs initiative, like Rotary, is a service. It's about service. It's about collaboration. It is about results. For both organizations, it is about doing good work and making a difference. I want to let you know that District 7780 is and will continue to be a strong advocate for this initiative and for the children and families in our communities. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
The head of our Recovery Initiative Committee is Police Chief Bob Mckenzie of the Kennebunk Rotary Club. Bob?
Good evening, everyone. So I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. I want to thank Governor Belanger. Thank you so much for being here and supporting this effort. I also want to thank the prior governors that have supported our efforts on the Recovery Initiative. It's meant a great deal. We are making a difference and will continue to make a difference, especially with initiatives such as this around ACEs. So a little bit about tonight. You may have the agenda, but you'll hear from a few distinguished gentlemen, and then at about 6:45, we're going to have a panel of 3 speakers. And after the speakers, you'll hear from a few of us again, and that's going to bring us to about 7:35. And from there, it's a question and answer. So you'll have an opportunity to ask questions of the panelists and whatnot. We will promise we will certainly done no later than 8, if not just before. So thank you. I want to now introduce Larry Mccullough, who has been phenomenal. I met Larry, I don't know, it's probably been close to a couple of years ago now anyway, and Larry was talking to me about, you know, this initiative and his thoughts around ACEs, and he's very passionate about this. And so we are very fortunate to have him with us tonight and assisting us in this effort. And there's a lot more to it, which you'll hear about. So Larry, take it away.
Great. Thank you so much. And let me, so I'm very, very happy to be with everyone. Thank you so much, Governor Belanger, for your very warm remarks, and Chief Mckenzie. It has been quite a journey. It has been almost 2 years that we've been discussing and thinking about this. And also thanks to Dave Underhill, who has been a huge champion of this work, as all of you on the call know. And it's great to see so many familiar faces. Who could have imagined a year ago that this is how we would be meeting? But here we are. And what's amazing to me is that we have adjusted so well. You know, it is, as many of you know, our original plan was to launch this initiative with an in-person session in May of last year, 2020, which couldn't happen. But our hosts for the Master Trainer and our leaders adapted over the summer, and we had a wonderful online Zoom launch program in the fall, which we were the second ever Zoom launch of Master Trainers for the ACE interface. So I want to share with you just a tiny bit. Hopefully many of you received the handout which we sent before. If you didn't, we can get it afterwards. It's really a basic summary of some of the ACE's work, but I want to just highlight a couple of those comments. And as always, it's always so interesting that when we get everything all lined up, then it just doesn't want to show up for us. So I'm going to share my screen. I'm trusting that this is the right thing. Just give it another moment there. So hopefully you are all seeing our Rotary Recovery Forum. There we go. So as Bob said, it's a very simple agenda. I'll do a very quick overview of ACEs and positive experiences, the sort of underlying concept. And our real time together is to hear some stories from some of your fellow Rotary members who have become Master Trainers. And they're going to share with you why they became involved in some of their passion around this work and what they see as the impact. We'll talk a little bit after that about some of the collaboration efforts that are ongoing and what some of the next steps are, how each of you can be involved and how you can engage your clubs and your communities. And as Bob said, by 7:30-ish, we will stop for questions, comments, discussion, and have an opportunity to chat. So very quickly, I just want to share this core concept of ACEs, which is that this concept of adverse childhood experiences is an underlying root cause of many of the common issues we address in health. This pyramid that you see, most of the time when we talk about prevention efforts, they look at the top of the pyramid. They look at disease that we can see and health risk behaviors, maybe at some of the social or emotional functioning. What Rob Anda and Vince Folletti and their research in the late 1990s made clear is that underlying all of these are what they called adverse childhood experiences, or we call ACEs for short, and that these have a neurological impact and a developmental impact. And it's not just over the 20 years since that time, there's actually been very sound scientific studies that have shown that this is actually a causal relationship. And not only is it relationship of the individuals impacted, but it's intergenerational. So that families who have high ACE scores, you see high ACE scores in the children that come up in those families. The pictures here of ACE interface, Rob Anda. Dr. Rob Anda was one of the original researchers of the ACEs study. Laura Porter did some significant work in Washington State, one of the first early implementations. And they really modeled some of the work in communities over a 10-year period, achieved some outstanding results. And the two of them are now devoting their lives to the training of what they call master trainers, or what we have as a core of master trainers, who are individuals who understand the science of ACEs and who are also in-depth understanding of how they can be addressed within a community. This big circle you see, I like this. This is a great image. Laura Porter calls it her oil slick slide. And so imagine that all of these conditions, all of these issues around the edge, these are all of the various conditions that ACEs have an impact on. And the percentage numbers, if you can see them on your screen, this is what they call the population attributable risk. So what this means is this is the differential contribution that ACEs make. So if you look at IV drug use, for example, the sort of rust color down in the lower left, 78% of adult IV drug use, the diff can be accounted for in differences in ACEs scores. That's a huge percentage. There are very few epidemiological impacts that have an effect like that. And if you look around the circle, many of these others, suicide is another one that has a big impact. Drinking and driving, 31%. Suicide attempt, 65%. Two of the most highly associated conditions with high ACEs scores are addictions and suicide. So for a community addressing challenges around opiate, substance use disorder, and other mental health challenges, addressing the underlying causes becomes really important. What I love about this oil slick slide is it's actually, it's kind of an analogy. If this were a flat disc and you're pushing the oil around, say we wanted to reduce the oil around IV drug use. If it's a flat disc, what happens? The oil just goes somewhere else. We can push it, we can shove it. The idea is, if this were flat, we drill a hole in the middle and drain the oil, which reduces the adversity and reduces the risk for all of these various factors. And that's the power of understanding the impact of addressing these experiences. You can read a lot more in the handout that we provided ahead, and there's many more resources online, but just a really quick summary of why those of us who are engaged in this feel so passionately about why it's important to address. One other thing that I want to share, and this is some relatively new research, and some of the folks on this call may have had a chance to take part in the conference that we sponsored this past October. Christina Bethel, picture in the upper right-hand corner here, did some significant research. She is the head of the Child and Youth Wellness Center at Johns Hopkins University, and about a year ago published similar research to the adverse childhood experiences, but this was looking at positive childhood experiences, or PCEs. And what they found was that when individuals reported higher levels of positive experiences, the incidence of adult mental health disorders was decreased. And the charts you see here, the green is good, the big lines here. And if you can look at the kinds of things, so able to talk to family about feelings, felt the family stood by them, felt safe and protected. And then the last four I find particularly interesting because they're not family-based, they're community-based. Had at least 2 non-parent adults who took genuine interest, felt supported by their friends, felt a sense of belonging in high school. I always thought maybe high school was too late, but apparently it's not. Enjoyed participating in community traditions. Each of those things, and what was so interesting, they also found a kind of dose response. The more of those experiences people reported, the less likely they were to report impact from their adverse childhood experiences. And that was true at every level of adverse experiences. So there is tremendous hope and understanding. The chart on the lower left comes from Laura Porter's research over 10 years in Washington State. They looked at the impact of developing community, and the light blue bars at the bottom indicated that the people who experienced community, things like strong emotional support from another individual, multiple sources of help. Do you have more than one person that you can call on? Reciprocity. Can I give you something if you give me back? I'll watch your kids if you can go do the grocery shopping. And social bridging, which is an interesting one, is being able to reach outside your own normal community to make contact with others. What I love about the positive experience research and the community research is this is the Rotary wheelhouse. These are the things that Rotary is really great at doing, and shows us that there is a potential through the community building experience to really have an impact on preventing ACEs and supporting individuals who have experienced ACEs in their lives growing up. The big story of all of this is that it's become really clear that we have to think about health as a double continuum. We have to think about reducing adversity, so not being sick, but also boosting the positive experiences that help to buffer against some of the adverse experiences. And both of those pieces are things that we address and are working with within the Master Trainer Program, the ACEs Awareness Program, and of course, Rotary as a community initiative has been doing this for years. So with that as a little backdrop, what we wanted to do is to have you hear some stories from some of your fellow Rotary members who are engaged in the Master Trainer Program and what their experience has been, what motivated them to come into it, what some of the potential impact. So I'm going to stop sharing for a moment, and I'm going to invite Greg Dowdy, who is this year's president of Dover Rotary, to introduce our next section.
Thank you so much, Larry. And I am so pleased to be able to join you tonight, to be able to be here tonight to talk about something that I have a lot of passion about. And you know, they say serendipity is when preparedness and opportunity meet. And I retired 5 years ago now from my career of working with at-risk youth in a children's home in Pennsylvania, and previous to that, one in Maine. And this has been my life's work. And through Rotary and connection to Larry and hearing about ACEs and what he was doing, we made a connection. And I'm so proud to be able to help out and join his board of directors at the Pine Tree Institute, but also bring Rotary to the table. Because Rotary, it's because of Rotary and District 7780 and the efforts of our Recovery Initiative Committee, Rotary clubs in District 7780, the Kennebec Savings Bank, Spotlight Fund, also the Maine Community Foundation, and through their support and through your support, we were able to bring Rob Anda and Laura Porter to Maine and Seacoast, New Hampshire. And wow, what an experience working with them. And Rob Anda, as Larry said, is the principal researcher of the ACEs research, and Laura Porter was with Washington State, the Family Policy Council, and she did a lot of bringing ACEs awareness to communities in Washington, and that's what we're doing here, and that's what District 7780 is doing. We're bringing this information and this awareness to our communities. And I want to thank the district, but also the 30 people that stepped forward to be trained as master trainers, because this whole concept is that these 30 people will then train 30 other people through community organizations and our connections in our community, so that we can share this information and spread this awareness of the importance of ACEs awareness and positive childhood experiences as well as counteract the adverse childhood experiences. So tonight we're going to talk about a couple of things that have already been mentioned. And Larry, if you could pull up slide 1 for me. So one of the things that you're going to hear a lot about is about community. You're going to hear about opportunity. You're going to hear about fostering thriving communities. And we know that Rotarians are people of action. And we have stepped forward and said, we're going to take a leadership position in this. And we're going to build this information across our communities. And Larry mentioned that the community interaction with children who have experienced ACEs is so important. And that serves as a protective factor in building their resilience. So that's what this is all about. And if you go to the next slide for me, Larry. There we go. And the other thing you're going to hear a lot about tonight is leadership and coming together. And that's really what this master training program was all about. How can we as Rotarians provide the leadership in our communities to bring people together to share this learning about ACEs and positive childhood experiences, so that we can see the results of our work in our communities in healthier children, healthier families, and just some really good positive experience for those kids. So this is a cycle. This is something we've begun to work on. This is something we're going to continue to develop. And I want to introduce you to fellow Rotarians of yours who have stepped forward to talk about why they decided to take this journey, how they can reach out to help others. And the first person I would like to introduce is Brittany Lashire. And Brittany is a member of the Kennebunk Rotary Club, and she is also a member of the District Recovery Initiative Committee. And Brittany's got some very powerful stories to share with you. So I'd like to turn it over at this point to Brittany Lashire. Brittany.
Great. Thanks, Greg. Appreciate it. Can everybody hear me good? Yeah, cool. Yay. I realize everyone's on mute, so no one's going to respond to me as I'm trying to hear for yes. Okay. Yeah, so my name is Brittany. Of course, as Greg said, I'm part of the Kennebunk Rotary Club. I'm going on 2 years next month, I think. So what I do for work really is the reason why I chose to get on board with the whole ACEs training. So I work at the Preble Street shelter programs. I'm right now a caseworker at the quarantine shelter for homeless people that have tested positive for COVID, which is fun. And I am a certified recovery coach, an ACEs master's trainer, of course. But I think most importantly, I identify as someone that is in long-term recovery. So that kind of is the reason why I chose to be a social worker. I first started hearing about ACEs in college during my undergraduate program. It's in a lot of our curriculum today. There's not really one course that I took that didn't at least touch up on the importance of ACEs and how it affects pretty much like every realm of life. So whether that was learning about like childhood development, my memory and cognition classes, I mean, you name it, like they related everything to ACEs. So when it came to doing or picking a topic for my senior research proposal for my capstone, I chose 3 variables, and one of them was ACEs relating to substance use disorder and emotion regulation strategies. And so I learned so much about Rob Onda's research through that, and just kind of what's been going on in the country right now as where that research has gone and exploded. And then when I heard about it again, or the first time really in the community, was during one of the Kennebunk Rotary meetings. Larry came in and told us like what Pine Tree is doing and kind of their mission. And I was recently new to the field outside of school a couple years ago, and I was like, wow, like people are actually talking about this in the community. That is so cool, because most of the older people that I am friends with that are also social workers, they don't really know anything about ACEs. It's only very new in the curriculum these days. Like people can kind of put two and two together, like kids that have traumatic experiences are probably going to have or more likely to have some of these later, problems that we see our clients with. But it's awesome to have people advocating in the community for it. So that's why I wanted to take this ACEs Master's Trainers course to really dive deeper into what ACEs is and how to best teach it in the community. So, and I really like it because in my field, especially with the individuals that I work with that are experiencing homelessness, there's not one person there that doesn't have a story to tell about some type of traumatic event that happened in their childhood. And I think that it helps me as someone that identifies with a really high ACE score, and also as a person in recovery, to work with these people best. And so not only do I have the personal experience, I have the education of learning about ACEs in the Master's Trainer course to best apply these practices to working with my clients, which is just kind of beneficial for everyone at that point. And thinking about like the greater community, it's amazing to have everyone here tonight and the Master's Trainers course of having the advocacy towards how mental health is just as important as physical health. And I know that we're kind of getting to that point in society a little bit, but I don't think that we're anywhere where we need to be and where we should be. But as we all know, good things take a lot of time. And I'm just happy for me and for everyone here to be a part of that groundwork to get the ball rolling with educating people about ACEs and how to identify people that could have higher ACE scores, or even just any type of childhood traumatic experiences that are affecting them in their current life or current situation right now. And the kind of people that I'm targeting and want to work with is law enforcement, Bob Mckenzie, and because I like working with people like that, and of course the other shelters that I want to work with. I have been teaching classes every semester with an old professor of mine at UNE about once a semester I go in and I teach about ACEs and substance use disorder specifically, and how the two of them have a codependency on each other and a relationship. And just going into all kinds of different workplaces. And I'm really excited to see where the 30 of us take off with this, because I know all of us are in, completely different fields, or, we have a lot of teachers, and we have a lot of people that are in the social work realm of some area. And we also have people in law enforcement or that work in the legal industry of some sort. So it's really cool how many people and all the messages that we can get out there, because at the end of the day, we're all one community. And I know that Maine and New Hampshire seem like big sometimes, but it's so tiny and it's so small. And seeing how our program can make a difference for the rest of the US, how they see we're implementing this in like this little region of New England, and having other states or other governors seeing what we're doing, or maybe other Rotary clubs in the US, and we can just it's kind of cool how we're like the pioneers of making this all happen. So that's why I chose to get involved in this ACEs Master Training. And thank you all so much for helping and being a part of this, because it doesn't take a couple people, it takes an entire community for real change to happen, especially in systematic change as far as just how everything works. So I'm really excited to be here, and thanks for all for coming.
Brittany, thank you so much. And you can see the passion that Brittany is bringing to this, and the importance of those community connections and who we reach out to in our community, because we can really have a great impact on a lot of people. And you know, one of the things that I wanted to mention before I introduce our next speaker is that many of you, and I see that you've already started to do that. Bob and Dave, I think, mentioned that we're going to have some questions and time to answer some questions after. Place those questions in chat and we will get to them at the end of the presentation. So I'm really excited about the interest that you are showing in our presentations. And now I'd like to introduce Kate Rafferty, and Kate is a member of the Rotary Club of Dover. And Kate's going to talk to you about what brought her to not only to the Master Trainer program, but what brought her to Rotary and how do those things connect? So Kate, welcome.
Thanks, Greg. I think all of our speakers, including me, are starting off by saying how happy we are to be here. And it's true, but I'm actually happy that you're here because for me, knowing that there are dozens and dozens of people from around our district who are really interested in hearing about this and learning more just fills me up and reconfirms for me that we're talking to the kind of people who are interested in making a difference. So thank you for being here. And I'll start by saying, unlike Brittany, who shared with you that in her experience going through school, she heard all about ACEs, I can confess that a year ago, I wouldn't have even had a guess what an ACE was. I thought it was a card in a card deck, and that was about as close as I got to knowing what an ACE was. And what I'd like to do tonight is just talk for a couple of minutes about why I got involved in this work. And for me, it's a lot of the same reasons that I got involved in Rotary in the first place. My background isn't social work or isn't something like that now. For the last 12 years, I've been working as an executive consultant, but I do have some background in human resources and worked as a psychotherapist. So I've really spent my whole career trying to help people be sort of the best versions of themselves. And about 10 years ago, I was looking for an outlet to use some of my energy to do good in the community. And a colleague said, you know, you really ought to give consideration to joining the Rotary Club. And I went to my first Rotary meeting and I was pretty much hooked instantly. And so 10 years ago, and have been enjoying it ever since. But the thing that drew me to Rotary really was the mission, this idea of service above self and being with a group of like-minded people who were interested in doing good things in their community. And Larry, if you want to bring up my first slide, you know, I know that my life is better for having joined Rotary. I know that I have made what are and will be lifelong friends. I know my community is better for having Rotary in it. And we've made a tremendous difference in our community, in the broader district, and certainly internationally. As I was preparing for this presentation, I was thinking about, oh, what have I done in the last few years to help out in the community? And if you'll notice in these photos, these are photos of things that, this isn't everything our club has done. These are just the things our club has given me the opportunity to participate in. We had a food drive. Like many of the clubs, we distributed masks. We went shopping and distributed about $2,000 worth of supplies for the homeless. We had a shredding event. We sponsored a Christmas tree, decorated a Christmas tree to be raffled off as part of a fundraiser for the local chamber. And this year, for the first time, we had a community-wide home decorating for the holidays contest where we drove around and judged houses. And that sounds like a lot, but what I want to draw your attention to is that in every single one of these pictures, we're wearing masks. These are things that we've done in the last few months. And for me, you know, earlier Greg said Rotarians are people of action. And that for me was the magic of Rotary. It was a way to put my energy into action. So I know you're thinking, okay, what's the connection here? So one of the things that I was really excited about when I joined Rotary was the weekly speakers. And one week we had a speaker who came to our club within my first year at Rotary who wanted to talk about rotoplast. And Larry, if you want to go to the next slide, many of you probably had speakers at your clubs who came in and said, You know, here are these beautiful children all over the world, born with a cleft palate, and all you have to do is sign up for a 2-week medical mission. You can go to Guatemala and you can be part of this. Well, where do I sign up? Like, you had me at the first little sweet face you showed me. And what you're seeing here in these pictures are some of the children that we helped as part of the mission that I was on in 2012. Karen, Dulce, and Eduardo, 3 beautiful children who, through the generous work of Rotarians and a really, really short surgery, had their lives changed tremendously. You'll notice one other picture on the screen. It's a picture of me with 6 of the local nursing students. And I like to show this picture, just a reminder, Rotary doesn't just pop in and do things, we partner with communities. Like, we're really great at partnering with communities. The other reason I always like to show this picture is at 5'2", I am rarely the tallest person in a picture. So I show that one everywhere I go. You know, it makes me feel tall. But what really made me feel tall was meeting all the families of all these kids whose lives were changed. And here's the thing, these are scars that we see that we can do something about and make a difference. And the connection for me was one speaker changed how I felt and changed my life. So fast forward 10 years, about, I don't know, a year ago, Larry Mccullough came to our club and gave a little bit of a chat about ACEs. And the more I heard about that, the more I thought, wow, these are the people who are around us every day. These are people who have had these adverse childhood experiences, and as a result of those are walking around essentially with scars we can't see. And, you know, one of the things that was hit home for me was this idea of, and you saw this in the handout that was provided as part of the pre-work that you were sent. In a typical American high school, 42% of the kids in a classroom of 30 have more than 3 ACEs. So we're talking about the kids in our community and who grow up to be the adults that we work with. And one of the things that struck me is that this isn't them, this isn't other, this is us. And Rotarians are great at helping us. We're all about helping our community. And, you know, one of the things that really struck me too was when they did this research, they did research on, you know, it wasn't just a random group of people. It was just a group of college educated people. So they were really intentional about who they looked at so they could come back and say, you know what, this is us. And for me, I wanted to be involved in work that was helping the people in my community. And, you know, I have pictures of kids on the screen because any of these kids could be any of the kids in our community. And that's what Rotary is all about. Going through the ACEs training with Rob Anda and Laura Porter, being part of that Zoom training, pretty intense. The expectation of master trainers is pretty high. I think that there are 5 or 6 from our district, but we're also working with people who are non-Rotarians. As Brittany said, people from all over the community in all kinds of walks of life. And I know in Stratford County, our group of master trainers has been meeting regularly so that we can talk about how we can make inroads into the community. Are there groups that we can meet with? Are there specific areas that we can target? So anybody who's on the call tonight, if you want a speaker at your club, please know there's plenty of us available to come and talk. And really, our first foray is, as a group, we did a presentation to the Dover Mental Health Alliance and reached out to all of the folks who were involved there. So I guess before I hand it back to Greg, I would just say part of the reason I'm involved is my personal passion in making a difference in the community, but probably as importantly, it just feels like the right fit for Rotarians who are looking to make a difference in their community. And thanks for being here tonight to hear a little bit more about it. Greg, I'll hand it back to you.
Kate, thank you so much. And thank you for showing the passion that is so much a part of this experience. And that passion was shared by all the 30 people that went through that master trainer program. And, you know, thanks so much, Kate. You know, and as you look at what we do in our communities. And that's one of the things that Rotarians are known for, is the passion that they bring to the service that they provide to our communities. And I want to introduce you to another Rotarian, a fellow Rotarian who has brought the passion for this work and joined it with the passion that she has in her career, in her profession. And I'd like to introduce Mo Sullivan, who is a member of Portsmouth Rotary Club. And she's going to share with you how it connects to what her life work is all about. So Mo, welcome.
You're muted,
You're
Mo.
on mute. You need to unmute.
Okay, great. Larry, can you pull up my slides? I just want to introduce a little bit about my background that Greg had referred to. I'm been a Portsmouth Rotarian for going on 15 years now. And I'm also part of the Portsmouth Coordinated Response to Substance Misuse, which really spun out of the work that Chief is doing in Southern Maine. And that has been sponsored by Rotarians, the Portsmouth Rotary Club. So thank you for that. One of the things I wanted to let you know that I do, I'm not sure if everyone's familiar with the Child Advocacy Center. So I'm the executive director for a Child Advocacy Center. And in a nutshell, what that is we are fact finders when there's any allegation of a crime committed against a kiddo. We're also the coordinators of the team that's responsible for protecting that child in the community. So I asked Larry to pull up the slide because these are real headlines. These are real cases. These are cases that we have had at the Child Advocacy Center in Rockingham County. And so I work with adverse childhood experiences 5 days a week, typically 3 times a day when we do a child abuse investigation. And so I've seen the effect that happens when a Florida mom comes up and sexually assaults a New Hampshire teen who was part of the fan club for Mccullough and Lewis. And if you don't know who that rapper is, you can ask Brittany. You can put that into the chat room later. She'll explain who they are. So Larry, if you go to the next slide, I've always felt that I put all these puzzles together because child abuse and neglect isn't just a legal problem. There is no more heinous of a crime than crime committed against the kiddo, whether it's a sexual assault, physical assault, witness to a violent crime. I've come to the realization that it's not just a law enforcement problem, it's not a medical problem, and it's not a social problem. It's ultimately a child and families problem. And as District Governor Belanger said, that solving this adverse childhood experience requires each of us to work together in the community for that child and that family. Not just me, not just law enforcement. So my plug for Rotary is, they've supported the speakers to have scholarships to take this adverse childhood experience. I've also received funding from Rotary for recording equipment because we record these interviews when we talk to a kiddo and we do these fact findings. So, this ACE training really is, Brittany said it perfectly. We're making progress and we're getting there, but we're not there yet. So if you look at the next slide, Larry, I look at the benefit of the ACE training, the master training, and we have to look at where we came from. So one of the things that Dr. Anda talks about, like law enforcement or like me or medical, he started this research because he was trying to not just triage a heart issue with, a new valve or a stent. He was trying to look at the cause and effect of what was the cause to health problems in the medical system. And so that's how this research started. I always kid around because he is, Dr. Anda's quoted quite a bit in my dissertation that I did. And I always say I have a crush on him. I met him 2 years ago in May when Rotary sponsored me to the original seminar on adverse childhood experience, which is where this ACE Master training spun out of. So I have a little bit of a crush on Dr. Anda. But I also wanted to say, you know, Greg said this perfectly. It's up to the leadership in the community to make a difference. And based on his study, I have already seen a huge difference in a change in the criminal justice system. We don't want to just prove or disprove a criminal case of child abuse. We all come together. We all come together as a group that wants to support a family. And what I love about this ACE Master training is, like, this is my work. This is my life work. It shouldn't just be my community that's supporting kids and families when they have an adverse childhood experience. It should be each and every one of us in our community. And when I go back to the history, I looked at the group of people that are attending tonight. And when I grew up, you're going to know how old I am, because when I grew up as a kid, it was stranger danger. And we expected to see, you know, somebody at the park with a raincoat that was going to flash you. Well, that's not the case anymore. And so we have to talk about this. We have to talk about it as a community. We have to talk about it to families. Brittany hit it upon it perfectly. We have to talk about this in school systems. And what we don't think about is that this adverse childhood experience actually has an economic effect, with people not being able to hold jobs, or substance misuse, or alcoholism. So if we want to have healthy communities, it was wonderful to understand that this ACE Master training has effect in all three layers of this. So when I looked at the, completed the ACE Master training, I wanted to look where I could be. So Larry, the next slide, I wanted to take a look at where I could be most effective in conveying the work of the ACE Master training. And so my group with the Child Advocacy Center is, I work with 37 police departments, law enforcement. I work with Child Protective Services. I work with prosecutors, victim advocates. I work with mental health, the hospitals, and the hospitals in the area, and then mental health facilities as well. So I want to take the ACE Master training to these groups. And I have to thank Rotary, because again, I got a scholarship to take this ACE Master training. So I thank you for that support. And so I want to turn this over. I think, is it Greg? If you all have any questions, I'm not sure where we go from here.
Mo, thank you so much. And you know, the importance of the work that you do, and this is what we can all do. And really, that's why it's so important that Rotary has been involved in this. And Larry, if you bring up that final slide for me on change. And you know, what the message to you is that it really is up to us. We can make a difference in our communities. We can bring about change. We can better the lives of the many children that are yet to be born, and the families, and make a difference. Because what we do is shaped by it's shaped by our thoughts, it's shaped by our conversations, the way we relate to one another in our relationships, in our families, and in our communities. And I'm just so pleased that, you know, we've been able to do this. We've got a lot of work in front of us, and the other Rotarians have joined us in this effort. I think Sharon is on the call. Sharon Trace and Bliss also went through the training with us. And as Kate said, there are 30 of us in York County, in Stratford County, and Rockingham County who are ready to reach out, who are ready to share this information, who are ready to take action. So thank you all for joining us tonight. And as I used to say to my staff and to the donors and supporters of the programs that I was fortunate enough to lead, thank you for making the difference in the life of a child. And that's what you've done. You're making a difference in the life of a child. So thank you for joining us tonight. Dave, Bob, I think it's back to you.
Actually to Larry, who's on mute.
So back to me just for a couple of closing comments. And thank you so much, Greg, Brittany, Kate, Maureen. I hope all of you on the call have a sense of not just the commitment and passion, but also the incredible skill and background. And the four master, Greg was also trained as a master trainer. These four are examples of the quality of the people that have come into the process. They're 30 people like this. It has been amazing to be part of and to witness as this has all unfolded. I want to share just a couple of closing remarks, and then we will have a chance for some discussion. Just a couple of points to bear in mind. One of the things that we have learned so clearly from Rob and particularly Laura Porter, who did this work over a 10-year period in Washington State and saw some remarkable changes, is that we're not talking about just another program. This is not a flavor of the day or flavor of the year. We're actually talking about changing mindset, which is much more difficult. And that's why the master trainer strategy was developed, because it requires that level of conversation and the level of dialogue and engagement that really helps people to understand. And the mindset, many of you have heard this, but a couple of pieces of that mindset. We move from what's wrong with you, why are you so crazy, to what happened to you? What is it that is contributing to what you're doing now? Which makes possible a completely different kind of conversation. And it's also the change from a strategy of reject and eject. That's a bad kid, get them out of the classroom, send them to the principal's office. That's a bad kid, throw them out of school. That's a bad kid, put them in jail. The reject and eject strategy to engaging with compassion and right fit. What happened to you, and how can we find a way for you to engage in a way that is really productive for all of us? A completely different kind of questioning. And it requires that kind of intensive work. As folks have said, this is a very focused program. We have 30 master trainers, roughly 10 from each of our county areas. So you'll see up here, York County, Stratford County, and the eastern portion of Rockingham County. And the master trainers come from every area. As Brittany mentioned, we have teachers, we have law enforcement, healthcare, social services, businesses, community leaders. And our goal over the 3-year period, the initial 3-year period, is to reach everyone. Rob Anda has a wonderful phrase. He said, this is a message that needs to reach everyone. So our goal is to presentations in every school, presentations for every law enforcement group, presentations for hospitals and medical centers, social services, parent and community groups, Rotary groups. Many of you are here. And what's exciting about the event this evening is many of you are the key to helping the master trainers connect with that larger group of people. Another associated effort that is also taking place simultaneously is our programs to foster collaboration within our communities. And this is where some of these factors really start to have some very tangible impact. All of this starts to work well. You see the gears. When all of these gears start to work together and can serve the population affected by ACEs and really coordinate and collaborate, you can really get action. And one of the associated initiatives has been the establishment of collaborative action in several communities. So the Portsmouth Community Coordinated Response to SUD was sponsored by Portsmouth Rotary and the Portsmouth City Council, started about 1.5 years ago. As was earlier mentioned, came out of some conversations actually with Bob Mckenzie around how do we coordinate. Portsmouth was able to initiate this and is working on creating a roadmap to become a recovery-friendly community. How can we actually address some of these substance use disorders from a trauma-informed or from an ACEs addressing perspective? The Portsmouth Community Coordinated Response, the Dover Mental Health Alliance is doing some very similar things and already had, Kate mentioned, a very strong presentation on ACEs in December. The Greater Kennebunk Coordinated Response, we were all set to launch. Just, I think one of our last face-to-face meetings was March 12th. So you will all remember what happened then. But this is all coming back together and looking at how we can coordinate response for the Greater Kennebunk area as well. And Chief Mckenzie may have a few things to say about that. And I want to end with why Rotary is so uniquely positioned to help with this. And I will also mention that the Rotary funding, we work closely with ACE Interface, Robbie and Laura Porter, and they said that the Rotary funding in this area has contributed to the most widespread community support of any of the master trainer initiatives they've been involved in. And I think that's in the range of 20 or 30. So it's made a huge difference in this area. And the things you do, providing connections, finding places where master trainers can give presentations, supporting these positive efforts in the community building, sharing the information. Rotarians have extraordinary networks of people, and sharing information through those networks and inviting them to become engaged. And then just continuing the great community building efforts. As I said earlier, these positive community building experiences, this is the Rotary wheelhouse. That is what Rotary does so beautifully. And making that contribution in a conscious way to address these issues has a huge, powerful impact. So again, I want to thank everyone for being with us tonight. I want to thank all of the Rotary clubs who supported this initiative and who continue to support this initiative. And also mention again, incredible support from Kennebunk Savings Bank, who made this effort part of their Spotlight Fund for the year and matched the Rotary donations, and also the Maine Community Foundation. The community support has been extraordinary, and we're looking forward to some really extraordinary outcomes. So thank you again. And I'm going to pass it now to Bob Mckenzie.
Hi again, thank you. I am moved, and I mean that, by everything that I've heard tonight. This really excites me. To go back a little bit, for most of you that do know me, but for those that may not, I've been in law enforcement for 32 years, been chief for over 13 years now. But I remember as a young police officer responding to calls, disturbance calls, domestic violence calls, you name it, to these households, and going into the homes and dealing with typically parents, but seeing the kids there on the side and talking to the kids. I remember one of my sergeants saying, we'd leave the call, say, we're going to be dealing with that kid in a few years, mark my words. Sure enough, years later, we're dealing with them as, teenagers, and really some issues. That has played out time and time again. Well, here we are. We learn about ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. And I feel at this point, we as a community can finally do something about it, being educated about it, and then moving forward together in a strategic way to solve it. Now, as Larry mentioned, we are undertaking a coordinated response in the Kennebunk area, and we're truly just starting out. I am bringing together a whole set of people, public and private. So we're talking about our municipal government, law enforcement in 3 communities, our leaders in the 3 communities, our business communities, Rotary, Chamber of Commerce, social services, medical, our school, faith-based, you name it. We're bringing these people together, and we're going to identify what issues are out there with regard to substance use disorder and what we can do about it in a strategic way. Now ACEs fits right into this, and this program couldn't have come at a better time, having these people trained, because I'm able now to utilize these folks that have been trained to come throughout our community and start training ACEs and trauma-informed care. So I have no doubt that we are going to make a difference. It does warm my heart because, again, back then when I was a young patrol officer, yep, we'll be dealing with them in 5 or 10 years. And we, you know, what are we going to do about it? There's nothing we're going to do about it. That's just, it is what it is. Well, now we have the opportunity to do something about it, but it takes all of us. And as Larry said, Rotary is so well prepared and versed to do this because we network, and we need to network and get out into our communities and bring our communities together to do it. So I'm pumped. I'm really pumped. I'm excited. Thank you to everybody that took part in this.
But don't go away.
That's
Don't
right.
go away.
So I'm going to turn it over to Dave now. Thank you, everyone.
I echo what Bob just said. I'm moved. We've had an amazing hour here, and we're going to have some more great discussion now. In just a minute, we'll start with some of the questions from the chat, and after that, we may have some general conversation. But I want to begin with a question for each of the panelists, because I think I'm a proxy for at least half of this audience with this question. Here's the question. I'm going to start with Brittany, but it's going to go to each of the four of you. I'm a Rotarian. I've just heard this update. I'm pumped. What do I do next? What do you think I should be doing, Brittany?
No pressure. I think that the next step for a lot of people here is being patient and developing tolerance. As we all know, like the famous saying that like stigma kills. And it really does. As someone in recovery and that has spent most of my little career that I have developed thus far is with working with substance use disorder communities and seeing the resilience that people in recovery have built because other people have loved them and cared for them and showed interest in what their recovery outcome looks like. I think that we can also apply that to ACEs and just kind of building an overall wellness in our community of smashing that stigma towards, like Bob said, people that are in the criminal justice system, you know, on the other end of the criminal justice system, or people that are suffering through mental health or suicidal thoughts or substance use disorder, any type of mental health, you name it, is just being there for people. And maybe it's a subconscious thing where sometimes, you know, we all judge people, and most of the time it's not, we don't mean it in a negative way. I just think that that's a lot of how our society works in this like whole dog eat dog world, and not, you know, I think that we need to work on lifting more people up, and it all just starts with like a shift in attitude of how we treat other people and just being kind and being people's cheerleaders that might need them, even though you don't know, you might not know too much about people's life. Everybody is facing a battle, whether that's a childhood traumatic experience or maybe even a current one through like a divorce or like a death of a loved one. I mean, anything. So I think it just kind of starts with the little things of just, you know, switching the conversation and being there for people a little bit more, especially in, you know, this whole pandemic is really bringing out substance use disorder and suicide right now. And just kind of being there for other people means a lot more than you might think. And I can definitely, my resilience started, I think maybe in college when a couple people, mostly one of my professors, showed interest in my life. And that's when I actually took my ACEs seriously and trying to build resilience towards that. So a small gesture to you might mean the world to someone else in trying to identify their traumas, and rather than people using them as a crutch that's weighing them down, building resilience and starting to use their traumas as strengths.
Wonderful. I'm going to ask Kate the same question, but I'm going to add the word Rotary Club. What can a Rotary Club do next?
So I would say from a Rotary Club perspective, I would advocate the exact opposite of what Brittany said. So Brittany, I don't disagree with what you said. You said we need to be patient, and I think we need to be patient and kind and tolerant. But I think as Rotarians, we need to be impatient. I think it's time for us to educate ourselves. This is science. The moment I heard what Larry had to say, I understood and believed the science. So if I believe these sort of adverse childhood experiences can make a difference and positive childhood experiences can make a difference, how do I not make a difference in starting to do something that will drive action in preventing and the outcomes that we know, or causing the outcomes that we know? So I would say Rotarians, be impatient, educate yourself, find out more about this, and then find out ways that you can create a trauma-informed community in which we're doing the kind of things that Brittany's talking about. And like Larry had said earlier, you know, switching our thinking from what's wrong with you to what happened to you, and taking action in that way.
I'm going to go to Mo with a relevant question. It's really the same thing, but I'd like to have you talk a little bit about what the Portsmouth Coordinated Response Group looks like, just some of the different disciplines who are at that table, because it's an example of something that other Rotary clubs could help make happen in other communities in our area, I think.
Yeah, it's a great group. I mean, you've got, I mean, Judge Nadeau is part of that group. So you've got judges, you've got folks from Portsmouth Regional Hospital, you've got people, town administrators. I'm trying to think who else. Department of Corrections, myself, Child Advocacy Center, victim advocates, school teachers.
Police and fire.
Oh,
Right?
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes the chief doesn't show up, so I forgot about him. But it's a good group that's working together. We lack some of the things that I think other counties have, like transportation, housing, because it's so expensive on the seacoast. But it's a good working group, you know, trying to solve. And we are seeing it now. And Brittany touched on it. It's not substance misuse. There's a beginning, that there's a beginning and a cause to that. So having taken this ACE master training kind of gives us a better understanding of why we have to start in the school systems and start talking about this and feeling comfortable.
Yeah.
And in terms of Rotarians, when I look at the average age of our Rotarians, this is the subject matter that we have been uncomfortable talking about for years. It's something that we have to be comfortable talking about, because you may be surprised when you do talk about it. You might find that somebody else who's an adult has had their own adverse childhood experience, and you may be able to offer support and comfort and know where to point people in the right direction for that support and help.
We're going to go to questions now. We have a bunch of questions from the chat. I'm going to try to synthesize and combine a couple of them. And then if we run out of questions, we'll do some open Q&A and conversation. But to begin with, what types of financial support can a club consider to help accelerate and grow this program? If I give the mic to Larry, he will go crazy telling you. I'm going to give you a quick synopsis on that, because I've been involved in the financial side of this. Mostly the funding in this piece that you've heard about tonight has come from the southern half of our district. It's the 3 counties that were on Larry's map. And it has come from 7 Rotary clubs plus a district fund, and then has been matched by external fundraising that Larry and his team have done with Kennebunk Savings and the Maine Community Foundation. So that's how the funding came to be for this first round Master Trainer program. Other clubs in other parts of the district could do similar things. I'll be happy to share numbers and formulas if you'd like to learn more about that. So the financial support is indeed important to get Master Trainer up and running. Somebody in the chat asked, when is the next Master Training? And the explanation for that right now is we train 30 people who are each going to train 30, which is 900 total in the footprint we just showed you. But that's what we could afford to launch. And I say we, I really mean Larry and the Pine Tree Institute. Rotary is one of the funding sources, but Pine Tree is conducting the program, and Pine Tree brought in Rob and Laura and has the follow-up strategies. So without going further into money, we'll just say this: there is more needed. I'm not raising money for the Pine Tree Institute. That's really not my role. But getting Rotary engaged includes fundraising. There's no question about that. So I didn't want to miss that point. Let me go to some of the other questions and throw them out to the team who's been trained. Does ACE's training cover prevention of adverse childhood experiences? And what is covered in that training? Recognition, prevention, response? Could somebody who's taken the training answer that one?
I might be able to answer that.
Sure, thanks, Mom.
It does not cover prevention. In a sense, it does, in that we're talking about it and we're looking at the cause and effect. But it is not a prevention program. That's something my agency will do in schools. But it's making us aware of the cause and effect. What was the rest of that question? I was looking at that myself.
I think it was, you addressed prevention. Could you headline what is covered in the training?
Okay, Brittany, you're gonna have to help me out with this one.
What's covered in the training a lot is it's kind of like multiple steps. So it starts out a lot with like the neuroscience and the brain chemistry behind what traumatic events does to your body physically, which kind of goes towards the general sense of like how that can affect the human body as they get older, like physically through different types of cancers, heart diseases, I mean, the list continues. And then also just like the psychological effect of that oil map that Larry showed earlier, of how these childhood traumatic events, the more a person has, or how do I word this? The more childhood traumatic events that a person has, the more likely they are to participate in IV drug use, or really any drug use, or have mental health disorders such as depression and anxiety and so on and so forth. So I think overall it just really touches on how it affects the person, and then also how it affects the community as well. Mm-hmm. And then the second half to that is, so with this information, what do we do with it as master trainers? And how do we go about not only educating the community in different, realms that, we all specialize in or want to educate, but how to just start raising a community that's better aware of ACEs and
yeah, perfect.
I'm going to stop with that.
You got it. Yeah.
I think it's
if I can add to that, and add to what Mo and Brittany have mentioned, I think one of the things that really comes across in the Master Trainer program is that this is knowledge. This is, as Kate mentioned, this is science. And there is a body of knowledge here that we need to understand. And then we need to take that body of knowledge and apply it to our life work, apply it to our communities, share the information, and begin to build an understanding of what it means to create positive childhood experiences, to combat those adverse childhood experiences. Because every single one of us, in one way or another, has been a significant adult in the life of a child. And as a significant adult, we can have a great impact on them through our words, through our actions, through the lives and the examples that we set. So I think one of the things that really came across for me in the Master Trainer Program, and I had a lot of background in this field to start with, but one of the things that really exploded for me as I went through the Master Training Program was what I think Brittany mentioned it. This is an epidemiology. This has an impact on the entire community, not just the child who has been affected by ACEs, not just the family who may be struggling with issues, but it affects the entire community and it affects our entire society. And that's the thing that really, I think is important for all of us to understand and for Rotarians to understand. You can make those connections for us in your communities and leverage your relationships so that we can share this information.
Terrific. I'm going to go to Larry for the next question, and I'm going to bundle a couple of things together here, Larry. The first piece of it is, can you explain how the trainings go forward? These 30 people, how do they do the training? How has COVID affected that? And how do you measure the outcomes? And that's a really important one.
So several answers there. One of the pieces of this whole process, the master trainers, they're called master trainers because they are the ones who go out into the community to provide training to others. And they will be providing training for what we call community champions or community resilience champions. And these community champions will also get trained in this way and also will start to think about how they can implement some of these actions in their own organizations or in their own communities. So that's the 30 training 30 rippling out into the community itself. The amazing thing about COVID is it has made us all really creative. So this morning I was on a brilliant call led by 3 of our master trainers with the Stratford County Addictions Task Force, and 106 people registered to start to hear about ACEs and how they can use this in their work. And it was all on Zoom. So this was not something that I envisioned a year ago. I don't think any of us did. And we are hoping that at some point we will be able to go back to in-person training, but the Zoom trainings have just been taking off. And a lot of people are being reached, and we are hearing that it's pretty effective. People are still working, they're still learning. The way one measures outcomes, so this, we really have to think of this as a long-term initiative. I often use the analogy of cigarette smoking. It was 20 years between the time that the research on that cigarette smoking was bad until there was any impact at all on the number of cigarettes smoked in the US. 20 years before there was any impact. And then the Surgeon General made some announcements, and then they started taking the ads off. And very slowly, you started to see the impact in the world. We're in that front end piece of ACEs awareness. So the outcomes we're measuring right now are how many people did we tell? We're looking at who did we reach? Have we been to every school in these 3 counties? Has every teacher heard? Have we talked to the families and to the parents? The idea being that the more people we talk to, the more we build awareness, the more potential there is to actually then see programs. And then what we are looking for in terms of outcomes is also some best practices that will start to emerge. And Dave, I want to address one of the other questions around police because it's an outcome, related outcome thing. One of my favorite best practices drawing on ACEs, and it actually connects with what Chief Mckenzie was saying earlier. It's a program, it not started as part of this program, but we're hoping to be able to share it with others, called ACERTS. where training police officers about ACEs, when they go in on a domestic violence call, if there are children in the home, the police officers are trained that after everything calms down, they go back to the home to talk to the parents about what kinds of support their kids might like. And they often take a teddy bear or something with them to make that empathetic connection. And it's a way that you can start to embed these ideas in the way we do our work normally. Again, it's not a new program, it's changing the way we work and think. So outcomes longer term, we expect to see what they found in Washington State was a dramatic increase in intergenerational transmission. They were actually able to track the level of ACEs in the next generation of kids, and health outcomes improved as the ACEs of their parents were addressed. But that was 10 years. We're about 3 months into our pandemic version of this. So kind of long answer, but hopefully that gives some sense of what we're looking to track as we go.
And a sort of a follow-on to you, Larry, is the effect on adults. Because one of the things that you heard early in this forum, I think it was Kate said 2 years ago, I'd never heard of ACEs. Hey, 2 years ago, I had never heard of ACEs. I'm not a trained healthcare worker or in any of these careers. And so when you become aware of that direct correlation, you learn something about yourself. I learned something about my own childhood. I won't share it in 100 people, but I'm not an ACEs score of 0, folks, and a lot of us aren't. You learn something about yourself. You learn something about the people around you or how you behave. And quite often what I've heard in some of the trainings and seminars is when an adult parent becomes aware of what happened to them, they have tools to begin to change their own parenting. And I just found that a particularly powerful piece of this program. Did I get that right, Larry?
Yep, absolutely.
Good. I think we might want to ask if anybody, I've got a couple of other questions, but I think we've covered most of them. If anybody has a question you'd like to voice, raise your hand, I'll call your name and we'll ask you to open your mic and voice the question. We've got about 7 or 8 minutes left. I'm scanning the screen. Any hands waving at me? If you don't have a hand waving, you're not going to get called upon. Chris, open your mic and take it.
So I voiced this to you direct, Dave. I come from a law enforcement background and I find myself more in a society leadership role at the moment. And a lot of this stuff is really nasty, icky, you just stepped in a cow flap in the middle of a pasture stuff. It's difficult for the individual who has a high ACE score to recognize and deal with a lot of the emotions and situations going on. It's equally difficult for society to deal with how an individual handles themselves as a result of their issues. My experience is that a lot of this is best dealt with by professional healthcare individuals, psychiatrists, what have you, to sit down and gradually work through the process. How, as Rotarians, yes, I agree with the whole inform the community thing. Is that the extent that we go to? I don't see Rotarians out on the street interacting in a law enforcement role. Where do we draw the line? Larry?
Well, I'll share one thing, and it's actually, I'm going to go back to Brittany's story. Somebody took interest in her life. Now, we have a lot of challenging things. You know, we all have our own stories. I have a very high ACEs score myself. When I saw that positive experience research, it actually changed my own narrative because some of those positive experiences were very high for me. Some of them were not, the family ones were not, but the community ones were really high. And it changed my life. There were people that took interest in me that made a difference. And they weren't therapists. They weren't, you know, I happened to go to a really great high school. I had great high school teachers. I had some really good friends. I happened to be part of a religious community that had really great community traditions. I'm just thinking of some of those positive experiences, and those had a huge impact on me. You know, Oprah Winfrey, there's a wonderful, if any of you want to research it, Oprah Winfrey did a 60-minute piece on ACEs about 2 years ago, and she shared her own story. She had some pretty dramatic, bad experiences, and she said there was one teacher who reached out and made a difference in her life, and she has done okay. So in terms of treatment, yes, we're not saying that teachers need to become therapists, but in terms of providing that kind of community support, every person can make a huge difference in other individuals' lives. And often it's simple things that just can help turn that corner and provide a sense of hope as opposed to a sense of despair.
We're going to go to Chief Mckenzie and then we're going to wrap up. Bob?
You need.
No, that's it. Again, I'm overwhelmed. I can't wait to see what comes out of this. We will make a difference and continue to make a difference. Thank you for everybody's support. You're going to make our jobs in law enforcement easier, believe it or not, you will, moving forward with this training and with what we're all going to do in the future. So thank you so much.
I would like once more to thank the panelists, all the Rotary volunteers, in particular, the volunteers who spent 30, 40, whatever it was, 60 hours on Zoom taking that training. That's a very, very intense program to do on Zoom. Our original plan was to do it in person over 3 days, and it would have been an intense 3 days, I can assure you. On Zoom, even tougher. Thanks to Rotary, thanks to the Rotary clubs. And what I hope you'll do now is don't stop, right? Run with this football. You have the contact information, or you can get any of it from me. We're all on the websites. These are people who can speak to your clubs. They're people who can help you. I would be happy to talk more about funding questions. And I promise you, Rotary is committed to this. And I'm grateful for all of your time. There will be a link posted to the recording of this, so you could use pieces of it as a club program, and you could look at it and study it and think about how my Rotary club or my Rotary career can be changed to embrace some of this training. So for now, on behalf of everybody, I thank you all. Please stay safe and well, and have a great night.
Many
Thank you all so much.
Thanks to all of
Thanks,
you
everyone.
today. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well,
Excellent.
thank you. Excellent program. Thank you.
Great program.
They will.
Well done. Thank you.
Thanks.